Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm in Dallas right now visiting my family
Uh-huh.
and um like I live in Pennsylvania, but like we're not used to this weather here. It's supposed to snow and
What
like
is it?
everything's closing and
How bad
school's
is it?
canceled. So it hasn't even started to snow,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but like they don't have the equipment here to like
Mm.
salt roads or anything like that. So they tend to just cancel everything to like keep people at home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get it. That's difficult. See, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're kind of like in the same boat. Like it snows like once in a lifetime, but when it does, everything just goes down the drain. Like everybody closes,
Yeah.
nothing works. Like, it's just it's crazy. And the way people drive is insane too. It's like because some people decide they want to go out and like there's wrecks all over. It's wild.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, here the problem is like people are like, "Oh, it's fine. There's no snow on the ground,"
yeah.
and they don't account for the ice. So they're like still trying to drive, but maybe it's not snowing, but there's ice, and then they get in accidents, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so
How are you in
I'm
the
like,
snow?
I'm okay. I grew up in the South, so I didn't grow up with a lot of snow.
Hmm.
But now, like where we live, like when it does snow, like the roads, like they pre-salt everything. They have plows to where like unless you're going out like first thing in the morning, they're usually clear by the time I have to go out anyway.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So you don't have to like usually deal with it. Yeah. Yeah, see, that's
Yeah.
why I was running late today, because like normally my wife, she's a nurse, so she like
Mhm.
drives herself or whatever. She does night shifts, but it's looking like it's gonna be bad tomorrow morning. So I was like, let
Yeah.
me go ahead and drive you just in case.
Yeah.
So
Better
it was
safe than sorry.
yeah, yeah. It's like I don't want to, I don't feel like like getting in my car or waking up in the morning to go get her, but it's like the last thing I need is like a car wreck.
Yeah, especially when you come off of like a 12-hour shift and you're
Sure.
tired, like you'll
Yeah.
be better off. You'll feel
Yeah.
better when it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, we can kind of get into it. We kind of already started, talking a little bit, just chit chatting. But, so, I mean, I guess you're pretty excited, right? You're going to the Arnold this year too.
Yes, so this will be my second time. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. The first time, obviously, like each time is special, but the first time it's like you don't know really what to expect. Um, because it's the first time you're doing like a big event.
Yeah.
So for me going into it last year, I think a lot of my nerves came from what's the structure going to be like and how close is everything and what's the stage like.
Hmm.
And now this year it's just I'm still super excited, but then I did the olympia and then like you put in the application and it's still kind of one of those things where unless maybe you're like one of the top girls, you're like, am I getting in, am I not getting in, I
Right.
don't
Right.
know. But I was super happy to be invited back to compete again. Honestly, last year, like the Arnold, it was such a great experience how they just like treat the athletes and, the venue, everything's close by.
Hmm.
So I really, really enjoyed the experience overall.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's coming up quick, just a little less than 5 weeks now.
Yeah. So, like, did anything like stand? I know you mentioned a couple of things already, like how they treat the athletes. Did anything in particular like stand out about last year that you were like, oh yeah, that's cool, or maybe this could have been done better, or whatever, like anything like that?
Yeah, so I did the Arnold Amateur back in 2018. So it was the last show I did before I turned pro.
Hmm.
And I remember just being like, I want to come back and we're not coming back until like I'm coming back as a pro. So for me, since the Olympia wasn't until December, that was really my first show. Um, where you're kind of solicited to come to the show. Like they pay your travel expenses and your hotel, and a lot of those costs are mitigated for the athlete. So I think for me, that was like the first time I got invited to one of those shows where you're like, man, like this is a different level of competing. So overall, in general, for me, I think it was just being, reaching that level in the sport of, I'm not just, putting my money into it, but they want me to come and they want me to perform.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really cool experience for me.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't understand, especially people that are like either are not competitive themselves or not around people that compete. Like, unlike other sports, bodybuilding in itself is like usually like money draining sport.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it takes a while, and some people never get to that level where it's like it's actually like financially beneficial, or at least you break even to compete.
Yeah.
And so like you're saying, it's like it's a super exciting like point to get to, because now you're actually can, you really like that is kind of like out of your mind now. You don't have to like even think about that part of it. You're just worried about the competition itself.
Yeah.
So how's the prep going? I mean, I know the Olympia and the Arnold is like very close this year. That was one of the topics that like everyone is talking about, especially with the men. That was like one of the bigger issues that was going on before. And now I think they've mitigated that. But how is your prep like during these two
I
close
think,
competitions?
so for me, I'm like, they're close in the sense of you can't like reverse diet and then diet back down. Like they're too close
Mhm.
to do that, but they're too far to be like to stray the other way either. That you really have to like, I think for me, the hard weeks were like right after the Olympia. They didn't announce the athlete invites for 3 weeks after that. So sitting in that limbo of like, am I dieting? Am I not? Like I was dieting, but like, am I doing this for a purpose or am I kind of like suffering for no reason?
Mhm.
That was like a hard place to be. And you're just kind of like living in limbo. And those 3 weeks fell, it was Christmas, it was New Year's, and you're like looking around, and I'm like, I'm missing out on things. And I hope that it's like gonna pay off and I'm gonna get invited. But there's always that
Mhm.
other side of if I would have missed those, chances to spend with my friends or my family, and I didn't get invited, I probably would have wished
Yeah.
that I would have been able to enjoy those days with them. So that was really, really tough. And then now after that, the invites came out January 6th, so it was 8 weeks out. I think for me, I've been in prep a long time now. I
Mhm.
started 21 weeks out from the Olympia. So I'm looking at
Wow.
like being in prep for like 32 weeks. So I can feel myself like just like slowing down a bit.
Mhm.
Um, More so in the sense of my energy's low, my endurance is low. My diet hasn't changed too much. I still have been responding, and my coaches are happy with how I look. Um, but it's more so just like I can lose my train of thought a little easier, those type of things. I
Yeah.
think it's just after being in prep for so long. But obviously, like it's not a regular show to where I could just pick another one.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely get through the next few weeks and then try to create a plan for the rest of the year. I'm not someone who like needs a long off season. I think I just need a couple weeks to like
Mhm.
clear my mind and have a little bit more food and those type of things. I really do thrive like in the heavy structure.
Yeah. How did like how are you structuring your like food intake and everything like that at this point? I mean, are you trying to get leaner like to come into the Arnold, or are you just trying to maintain of what you had in the, in the Olympia?
So we're trying to come in a little bit leaner, but obviously not too much. So from Olympia to now, I would say we were really maintaining, and then these last like 5 weeks, so we'll more so dial in. Um, and I'm happy. I haven't over dieted and lost too
Mhm.
much muscle or anything like that. I tend to always get the same feedback, and it's always great shape, great structure, coming a little bit tighter.
Mhm.
So that was my feedback from the Olympia. So that's something that I can control in 11 weeks. If my feedback was, change your shape, get a lot bigger in
Yeah.
11 weeks, I'm not really going to be able to accomplish that. So I feel good going into this. I think I'm my own worst enemy in the sense of I can get really anxious backstage.
Mhm.
So going into this show, being more aware and trying to control that, um, so that your cortisol doesn't get crazy, and I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah.
create myself to sabotage myself.
Yeah, yeah, that's is that tend to be like an issue for you? Is it well, like what causes that? Just anxiety to step on stage, or is it the level of the show? Or is that just
I
something happens
think
all the time?
um, so for me, like I'm a nervous person in general. Last year going into the Arnold and the Olympia, for me, I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm like
Mhm.
just taking it all in. And I'm like, how am I on stage with these girls that I've been watching for years? And it creates that like a little bit of heightened anxiousness of like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like a little weird because I've been following the sport for so long and like been a fan of fitness for so long. And then to just be up there with them mentally, I'm like, what am I doing here? So I think last year that was something that I more so struggled with, but I didn't know in the moment. It was something that I had to like realize after the fact, to be like, I deserve to be here. I'm not
Yeah.
saying and I have a lot of potential to get where I want to be, but it's just focus on my own race and just enjoy the
Mhm.
experience, and I can't control anything else.
And that's kind of like the best way to be, especially in a sport that's like individualized like that.
Mhm.
It's like if you focus too much on like other athletes, other like things that you can't really control, it sometimes can like detract from you when like otherwise you wouldn't that wouldn't happen if you just kind of focus on yourself, focus on what you need to do. And that's easier said than done, obviously, because there's a lot of variables that are going
Yeah.
going on during that moment. um, so then Olympia, you were first call out, right? So
Yes.
it's like your first Olympia, first call. That's a pretty big deal, right? Where did you end up placing again?
So I was ninth overall.
Mhm,
So there was 8 girls in first call out. So overall, I was happy. I went into the show. I wanted to get top 10 in my first
mhm.
Olympia. And I really did want to like remove myself from, putting too much pressure on myself.
Right,
Because you only get to do, hopefully I get to do the Olympia several times, but you only get to do it your first time once.
right, right.
Just being present in the moment. My family had flown in and my husband was there, and just enjoying the experience because after prepping for so long for one show, it's really easy to get caught up and think like, I'm not going to be happy unless I get X, Y, and Z. So I gave
Mhm,
myself, I think, a bit like a looser goal, just to really try to enjoy that experience. And I did really have a lot of fun. And that's what I want. Like when I leave shows, I never want
yeah,
to leave a show feeling disappointed, in an outcome. I can
right.
feel disappointed in my performance, but I won't ever be the type of athlete who's upset over the results.
Yeah, yeah. That's like uncommon in because the most of the stuff that you hear are people just disappointed with the results or with their placings and things like that because it is a subjective sport, but again, to the point that you can't control that, right? Like you can only
Yeah.
control like your own, routine, your physique, to a degree, but the placings you can't control. But top 10 in your first Olympia is a big deal. Like not a lot of people can say that. So I mean, you're saying that they usually have like your feedback is to come in tighter. I know in fitness it's unlike any other division
Mhm.
out there, right? Because you have a routine. So there's like how do you like the best way I guess I can phrase this? Do you consider the level of leanness that you bring in with regard to the fact that you have to do these physical exercises? Because I would imagine it would be hard to be as lean as some of the other divisions that just do their routine like posing, and
Yeah.
you have to do a lot
So
more than
that is
that.
something that my coaches do factor in. Whitney Jones is one of my coaches. So like
Mhm.
she does this. So she
Yes.
gets it. And the other, there was a couple pieces to my puzzle this year. After the Arnold, I had carpal tunnel surgery and a meniscus rescission.
Mm,
And so post Arnold, my cardio was maybe I was doing an hour, I think 5 times a week. And then really quickly it went to 0. And usually we would taper it off. So I did have, in the summer, my body fat had gotten higher than I was used to. So I had a longer way to go. So that was one kind of piece of the puzzle for me. And then the other thing is like I'm 29. So I think Ariel was the next youngest in first call out, and she's 30. So a lot of women, hit their stride with, muscle maturity in their 30s.
right.
Mid 30s, I think, they're developed, they've had time to create their structure, their shape, and the density. I think that's where I struggle a little bit. I've been competing about 6 years, but I also probably started working out. I was only working out maybe a year before I got into competing.
Mhm.
I was active and I did cheerleading and did, gymnastics when I was young, but like for specifically weight training, I wasn't necessarily doing that. So I think for myself, it's always to come and improve, but also being realistic with, the timeline that I've been doing this, compared to most women is a little bit shorter. So it's going to take me a little bit longer to catch up.
Right, like, having more realistic goals and everything like that. Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, that you brought this up, I was gonna talk to you about it a little earlier, but we kinda got, talking about, the Olympia and the Arnold. So how did you get into, like, competing and training? Because, obviously, you haven't been doing it for an extremely long period of time, so something motivated you to get into this, this industry.
Yeah, so I did gymnastics when I was young. I didn't get into it when I was like really young. I think I was like late elementary school, but for gymnastics, that's kind of old to start.
Mhm,
So I did that maybe from like on and off from like fourth grade to like seventh grade. And I got, in a short amount of time, that was only 3 or 4 years, I got up to level 6 and 7 for competition. So I had a natural inclination to gymnastics and those type of things. So I enjoyed that. And then I transitioned to doing cheerleading. Um, Gymnastics was a big time commitment for someone that age. Um, I was probably practicing, 20, 24 hours a week. The practices were 4 hours long. And I knew going into high school, I wanted a life and I wanted to socialize. And as long as gymnastics, we had some coaching changes as well, too. But I just knew that that wasn't, really making me happy anymore. But I wanted still some type of that element in my life. So I started to do cheer in high school. I actually cheered at a small D1 school in college. We just had a basketball team and we didn't compete. So all we did was, some performances, basketball games, and appearances here and there. But it was still enough to like keep it in my life. And I was able to, go to my practices. So I met my husband when I was a senior in college. And I had signed up for a trainer at the gym. She actually ended up quitting, like the first person I was assigned to, which she's Caroline DeCampos. She's like one of the
mhm.
top like WBFF pros now. Uh,
Yeah, I know who you're talking about,
so
yeah.
like years
Mhm.
ago, she was like before she got into this, she was my very first trainer. And
Small
she
world, huh?
Yeah. So she like left and she was moving on to something else. And I got reassigned to a trainer and now he's my husband. But he was into competing and I had a inkling that I wanted to do something, give myself a challenge. At the time, like at that time, it was 2015. Bikini was still kind of new, and that was probably, I mean, it's just so popular, especially in the area that I was. And so that's really I picked a show and I was like, I'm gonna do bikini. This is what I want to do. And so we started dieting for it. And then as I started dieting, my shape started coming in and we were just like, I don't fit this criteria. So that was right when I finished college and I was actually about to move to Texas.
Mhm.
So we decided to just hold off for a year and that I would compete the next year and do figure. Next year kind of rolls around and my husband's actually the one that was like, I really think you should try fitness. Like, he's like, I've seen you do back handsprings, the length of the basketball court and flip around, and, you're strong
Yeah.
enough to do this stuff. So at the time, we were living in Texas, and Trish Warren is local to the area, and he had reached
Mhm.
out to her and asked her to work with me. And it was like our anniversary, and that was like his gift to me. Um, so I kind of got into it that way. I almost just like fell into it because I wanted to compete and I was like, oh, this is something I think I could be good at. So I did my first show here in Dallas. And I was the only fitness competitor. So first place, woo.
Those are the
Um,
best kind of competitions, right?
and then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go do a national show and see if I'm actually good. So I went to North Americans that year and I got second at my first
Wow.
national
Okay.
show. So, just short of going pro at my first national show. And that's when I was like, oh man, like I think I can make a run at this.
Yeah.
So he coached me that year. The next year he coached me again. I didn't turn pro until 2018. So after another year of him coaching me, we had gotten married and we had kind of both
Mhm.
decided that it was better for our relationship if he wasn't going to be coaching me, if that he could just be supporting me. And that's when I started working with Pro Physiques in Arizona.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was September of 2017. So this year will be 6 years that I've been with them. So then the next year I turned pro at Junior USA's in 2018.
Mhm.
And then 2019, I did one pro show, and I would, by all definitions, call it a flop. I had a lot going on in my life. I think at the time I was working like 3 different jobs. I was taking some classes, and I wanted to do it so bad, but I wasn't in a place in my life to like be giving
Yeah.
it. I was giving it everything I had, but it wasn't 100%.
Yeah, I can't imagine because just with me, like, just having a few things in my life, I'm having trouble finding time to even work out. It's like, to be able to compete with 3 jobs and all that, that's just that's rough for
So
sure.
I look back and I think I was, that's probably one show where I was like really disappointed with myself. But I think I look back and it had to happen for a reason. Like I needed to know that like the level that I was at, I had to elevate it if I wanted to do better in the IFBB.
Yeah.
It was good enough at, NPC. I didn't get last at my first pro show, but more so like everything can't come easy. I kind of fell into this and I had good, I never had a bad placing as an amateur. So for me, even though it hurt in the moment, it's what I needed to want to grow and
Mhm.
want to get better instead of just kind of maintaining where I was at and kind of thinking that it was going to just all work out for me.
Now, was it like a shock to place poorly or not do as well? Or were you going into the pros thinking, okay, well, I'm kind of bottom of the barrel, so to speak, at this point, fresh, new face, people have been competing already for a while. I'm coming in completely fresh, probably not going to do as well. Or were you just completely like flabbergasted?
I went into it knowing that like I wasn't going to be like in the top five. I didn't think that that was like within my reach. I wasn't that unrealistic. I think I was like more so. I kind of just expected to end up middle of the pack,
Mhm.
um, just because everything seems to look kind of the same.
Yeah.
But I was also like more like I'm more so like my routines are really skill heavy. They're not as like they weren't as performance oriented. That's where I really need to grow because even now, a lot of the best performers aren't necessarily the highest skill level.
Mhm.
So it's finding that balancing act of like, how can you make this a performance and not just, a lot of skills.
Mhm.
So for me, I was 26 at the time,
Mhm.
25. So I was still really young, like just like green.
Yeah, yeah.
I was excited. I think at my first pro show, I was the youngest one there. I didn't want to be at the bottom for physique. So uh, I was in second call. I think there was only 2 call outs, but I was like at the top of second call out, I think from what I remember, or there was like 3 call outs and I was in the middle of second.
Mhm.
But I went into that show. I was just like, I just don't want to get last. I just don't
Yeah.
want to get last. And I didn't, but it didn't, second to last didn't feel much better.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely understand that. Yeah, but like you said, sometimes that's what you need. Like sometimes you need to kind of not do great, so it kind of motivates you to, to get better. And that's
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people, some people are going to have an easier road. Um, but really, like the women in this industry that I'm like most inspired by are the ones that, didn't just, start competing and always have good outcomes. It's
right.
overcoming the bad outcomes because you like yours to a level. So to only ever have good outcomes, what are you really going to learn and develop beside this? Um,
Right.
because I have a full time job in finance. I didn't go to school for finance, and I feel like I had to like rip and claw my way to like where I am now,
Yeah.
with my job. But in type of thing, I go into everything with like no expectations. You
Mhm.
get what you work for, and like some of the like Oksana, Whitney, all like even Missy, her first Olympia, she was last, and now she's, one of the best in the world
Yeah,
in our
yeah.
sport. Um, it's taking those experiences and learning from them and improving.
Yeah, yeah. I've had Missy on a couple of times. I really want to get her on again and sometime soon. It's been a couple of years, but yeah, I mean, she has an incredible story, and just to kind of, lose her title and then get it back. It's like it shows like determination. And I completely understand where you're coming from. Sometimes when you look at someone who's always been at the top, it's hard to get motivated by them because it's not really relatable to most people. But when you see
Yeah.
somebody like not do as well and then like to regain their composure, train hard, claw their way, like you said, like you claw your way in your, in your job, in your bodybuilding career, and then get back to, or for the first time, get to that point of, elite level. It's much more inspiring to the people that are around them, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's that relatability. It's anything with a training plot, Rocky, those type of movies
Yes, yeah,
where sometimes the goal isn't to win. Sometimes the goal is to finish
right,
what you started, and you made a commitment, and as long as you're giving it your best effort, you can still be proud of that, even if it's not the outcome you wanted.
right. And sometimes in a sport like bodybuilding, you might not get the placing that you wanted, but you still might bring the best physique to that point for yourself. And that's got to
Yes.
be a win, right? Like if you come in better than you've ever done in the past, no matter where you place, that's a win for you. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to focus on your own, like I said before, like your own race, because what you see in yourself and what the judges see in you, or what you can only control yourself.
right.
I can't control if another competitor comes on, if they come in at their best, or if they come in 10% worse than the last time they were on stage. You have no control over what they're doing, so you have to just find that faith in yourself and be happy with the effort that you're doing, and just be proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned Oksana, and it's the Olympia almost seems like a blur, at this point. But there was something that happened, right? Like, was she hurt? Did she get hurt before and she
Yeah,
couldn't
so
compete,
she
right?
had a few weeks prior, she had torn her calf.
Mm,
But she was trying to rework her routine to make it happen.
yeah.
She was really, up until I think the day prior, she was like, I'm going to do everything I can to get on stage. But then the time came, and I think it was right after the press conference. I think she went and she tried, one last time to see what she could do, and then she made the decision to pull out, just for her calf.
Yeah.
And I think same thing. She was on the Arnold list, and now she's not. So I believe it's the same injury that she hasn't quite recovered from.
Yeah, that's tough, especially like in the calf area. That's with all the moves that you guys do. You really can't have a
Yeah,
weak link like that. So that's tough. That
yeah,
was kind of like a real big letdown because she's definitely one of the ones that everybody wanted to see in that division and see kind of where she
yeah.
fared.
Me
So
too.
yeah, yeah,
She's just one of those, like, she's just such an excellent performer. I think that
hmm
she's just such a good representation for the sport. She has a great heart, and like, I love how involved she is with trying to promote fitness, and working with other athletes, and even
yeah,
just being able to meet her at the check-ins was cool for me, because and that was the first time I was going to get the opportunity to compete with her.
hmm
So I was super looking forward to that. But if I didn't get to do that, but I still got to meet her.
right.
um, and the first thing was like a nice big hug, and then it was just words of advice. It's your first Olympia, enjoy the experience, and don't get too worked up. And she was just being very encouraging.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome to see that kind of camaraderie. Most of the fitness girls that I've talked to over the years on this show, they've always like made it very clear that it's a very close knit division, very close knit community. A lot of the girls talk to each other and keep up with each other and so forth. So I always kind of like to see that. Some divisions you have like a lot of back and forth, a lot of animosity, between some of the top competitors. I don't see this in fitness at all. Like maybe there is, and I just don't see it, but everybody seems to be like very like caring towards each other. I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's been the only experience I've ever had. I've
Mhm.
never had any animosity with any other competitors. I'm sure it's there, I'm not gonna pretend like it's perfect, especially at the very highest level,
Right.
when you're a little more wrapped up into this.
Mhm.
But I will say, like, my probably the people that I'm closest with are other competitors that I don't even like live near, but they're probably who I talk to the most.
Yeah.
And especially like when you're in prep for so long, I have, a close group of friends where I live, but at the same time, they're never really going to understand the choices that I'm making,
Sure. Sure.
why I'm making them, and um, just understanding really how you feel in prep, and just being aware of like, it's not that I don't want to spend time with you, but like you don't want to spend time with me right now.
Right.
It's like I am excluding myself, or I'm being an introvert because like
Right.
I'm on a short leash here.
Right.
And where I'm so tired that, if I come and sit there, I'm gonna be a bump on a log.
Yeah.
Um, so I really think other competitors truly understand that. For me to be able to like have them and be able to text them, and just kind of have them lend an ear and know that like I don't need there's no thing that they can fix for me, but they can listen and be like, girl, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of like how it is, right? Like towards the end of prep, it's a you're like almost a totally different person. So, and a lot of like regular people or don't compete, aren't involved in like elite level sports and things like that. They have a hard time understanding that, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but that's just part of the deal. It's like they don't do what you do, that so,
Yeah.
they don't make the sacrifices that you make. So it's hard for them to understand that. So
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think for myself, like the older I get, I think I get a little bit better each year because I'm the one choosing this.
Mhm.
Other people shouldn't get backlash because I'm hungry. But I've also learned that I need to set clear boundaries. Where I thought I was setting clear boundaries, maybe I need to over communicate this boundary, so that to prevent those type of things from happening. And I think
Sure.
I don't necessarily need my friends or family to fully comprehend what I'm doing. I just need them to know, like, if you support me, I need you to not try to get me to take bites of food. Like, I know you
Yeah.
think it's not going to make a big difference, or you're like the type of person who's like, oh, one drink, it won't hurt. Um, but to me, like, I have to like set those boundaries with my friend and be like, when you do that, it's hurtful to me because it's telling me you don't support me. And when
Right.
your friends hear that that's how you feel, that type of behavior goes away because
Yeah.
they do support you, and they don't realize that maybe you're like an inch away from cracking, and you
Yeah.
just need that extra, like, don't be the person who's going to push me over the
Right.
ledge.
It's like you're already fighting yourself, to avoid these like certain steps that you can't take in prep. And it's like the last thing you want is to fight yourself and then fight another individual, about it too. So it's like yeah, no, I completely get where you're coming from, but but that's how it is. Like you said, I mean, they don't need to necessarily understand every detail. They just need to understand like this is how you support me, in this in
Yeah.
this this space that I have. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So are you we talked a little bit about, not focusing on yourself, staying in your lane. Are you the type of person that kind of like looks at the competitors list of who's going to be competing? Like, do you know who's going to, be in at the Arnold?
Yes, there's 10 girls chosen. There's 9 now because Oksana isn't competing.
Hmm.
I try really, really hard not to be like, well, these girls are going to be top two. These girls are going to be, because you're kind of square pegging people in the sense
Mhm.
of, I mean, I think I have a good grasp on who's going to be like one and two. Like Jacqueline and Ariel, they were second and third at the Olympia. Ariel won last year. Like, I would be flabbergasted if they weren't one and two. As far as
Yeah.
everyone else goes, I don't like to think of people in the sense of like they're going to be seventh, eighth, ninth because
Yeah.
of who else on the list, because that's me being ignorant in the fact to say like they couldn't have drastically improved.
Right.
I do, especially at larger shows. The last year, I only did the Arnold and the Olympia. This year, I had the Arnold up first. I do try to focus more on just myself and knowing what I need to improve on, because if I'm getting the feedback from the judges and I'm constantly coming improved, how can I be penalized for that?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you can't control who shows up and how they show up.
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
I fell into that habit, I think, when I was doing smaller shows. Um, Not last year, but the year before. That was after I did my first pro show. That was 2021 was really the first year I competed for myself. That's what I actually considered like my rookie season, because it's the
Mhm.
only time I competed more than one show. So I did one show in 2019. I didn't compete in 2020. And then 2021, I did Chicago Pro, Tampa Pro, Arizona Pro, Nashville.
Mhm.
So I was getting in the habit of Chicago Pro. It was my first show back. I wasn't necessarily as much in my head. Um, and then Tampa Pro, I'm like scanning that list and I'm like, oh, can I make the top five? Can I be in the top five? And then Arizona, kind of same thing. And then going into Nashville was the show I won to qualify for the Olympia. Um, I was
Mm.
really like, I remember the list came out and I was just like, well, I don't think you could, like, to myself, like, well, I think you can get top three, but I don't think you're going to win. So I've realized that me doing that for myself is self-deprecating to the point of
Mhm.
like, I can't, I can't continue to do that because it's negative self-talk for myself. I
Right,
walked
right.
away that show still winning, but I could have poisoned myself against myself.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes, obviously nothing is 100%. Like in this case, you said you, even though you said that to yourself, you still won the show. But sometimes, what happens is you just kind of fulfill that prophecy. You tell you don't allow yourself to just place where you would naturally. You kind of like pigeonhole yourself in a certain
Yeah.
space, and then you end up placing around that same,
Yeah.
you compete to the level that you expect yourself to compete to, it's,
Yes.
and that's, that could be damaging for sure. No, I completely
Yeah.
get it.
And I even think I look back on last year and I wrote, my goal for the Arnold last year, I wrote it on a post-it. It was top six. I got top six. My goal for the Olympia was top 10. I got ninth. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I need to make more unrealistic goals, or I need to make a non-measurable,
Right.
more so not the results being the goal, but like a personal goal.
Right, right. Like I want to have a certain, certain look, or improve a certain body part, or have my routine be a certain way, hit my routine in a certain way. Yeah. Speaking of routines, are you keeping the same routine as you did in the Olympia?
So I am. We have made some tweaks just based on
Mhm.
my feedback. I personally am someone that thinks that like I do the routine. Probably my best performances are the second or third time I perform it versus the first.
Mhm.
And they were so close together that I figure I'll do it one more time and then it'll be retired after the Arnold, and I'll
Yeah.
do a new routine for the remainder of 2023.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed that routine. It didn't go quite as I had planned at the Olympia. I don't know if you've talked to anyone from them, but a lot of the fitness girls were having trouble with the floor.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
they put a nice amount of padding on that floor, and the Olympia production, I think they were really trying to do us a service, but it was a little too much. The floor was almost kind of like trying to perform on like a mattress topper.
Hmm.
So that just that sinky feeling to where certain movements you were like sinking in, but then you had no give.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there was one part in my routine that I was like more towards the end. I was 13th. Um, like there was a piece that like my foot got caught on a piece of carpet that was loose. So there was like those little things like I can't control that they really happened because I couldn't have prepared for that.
Well,
Um,
let me ask you this. Was this the same padding that they had for all the other divisions? The reason I say that is because I haven't talked to many people in fitness from the Olympia, but I have talked to several wellness competitors, figure competitors, and others, and they all, and from watching the show myself, but also from speaking with them, they all had trouble. They all stumbled. Even the Olympia champs, like all kind of like almost fell, almost stumbled. Like it wasn't quite smooth. And as soon as a couple of people did it, I realized, okay, these people are way too good to way too high level to be like, you know, looking like this. So something is going on. And so after I talked to a few people, they said the carpeting was an issue. So is that the same thing that you guys
yeah,
had? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure there was a handful of girls that were fine, but like I think the overall consensus was that it was just a little too squishy.
Mhm.
In the sense of like it wasn't like springy squishy. It was like you
You
squish in and
sunk
you
into it.
go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
same thing when we had to get back in our bikinis and our high heels for awards, I we didn't even have to walk across the whole stage. We just had to walk to the diagonals, and I was like, "This is hard."
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like sand. And so I can't imagine, for the bikini wellness figure girls that were all, walking across the stage. I'm like, this was hard.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we'll see what the Arnold has. I'm curious to know, and I'm also
Yeah,
curious to know if they change it for the Olympia next year. But
yeah, I'm fairly certain that Arnold keeps their stage about the same because it's in the
Mhm.
same place every year. So I'm not too worried about that, but you never know.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. Yeah, yeah, it's exciting. It's very exciting. It'll be here before you know it. You'll blink and they'll be already here.
Yeah, so I had mentioned that I'm in Dallas right now visiting my
Hmm.
family. My nephew turns 4 tomorrow, so his birthday was on Sunday. And then my husband and I are planning to move back to Dallas later this year. So I had come
Hmm.
out to do some house hunting. That's kind of been derailed by the snow.
Yeah.
Uh, but we weren't on like a tight timeline or anything. But I came out here. I actually came here from a work event in
Hmm.
Louisville. So I left my house last Wednesday for a work event and left there to come here. I don't come. I go home on Wednesday, and then I'm going out to Pittsburgh to do Road to the Arnold the following Wednesday.
Hmm.
And then that Sunday, I'm actually going to Arizona and I'm going to finish my last 2 weeks of prep in Arizona with my coaches. So
Got
I
it.
know as soon as I get home, I'm going to blink and it's all going to be over.
Yeah, because you have so many steps like that you're taking each week. You're not it's like it's going to be so quick. You're going to be on that stage before you know it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm definitely wishing you the best. I know you'll do great. It's amazing how Texas has really like become a real hotbed for bodybuilding. A lot of
Yeah.
like good competitors are, coming out from
Yeah.
Texas. So.
So I lived here before. My parents were divorced and my dad moved here. He's a police major for Dallas Police Department.
Mhm.
And then I grew up in North Carolina, but I came here all the time as a kid because we were shuttling, back and forth. So I
Right,
was here a
right.
couple times a year. And then I actually went to grad school here in Arlington. So we lived here about 2 years, but that was 6 years ago. So we're just ready to like move back, be near family, and um, I just even remember like 6 years ago, like the community here for bodybuilding was huge. Destination
Yeah.
Dallas is down in Allen, Plano. That's where Better Bodies is based out
Mhm.
of, and then they just have so many gyms. Metroflex is down in Arlington, and they have several events. And then NPC Nationals is actually coming back or coming here at the end of the year.
I heard that. Yeah, I
We're
heard that
hoping that we're here by then, so that we can kind of be it,
yeah,
be it, be at
part of
that
it.
event.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be exciting. You got a lot of big things, happening, but first things first, you gotta get the take, good placing at the Arnold. And so if you, I mean, obviously, like if you win, you're definitely, shooing for the Olympia, right? If you don't, and by you, I just mean anybody, and you'll have to compete again, right? Like you'll have to win a show.
Yeah, so they got rid of the point system.
Hmm.
So I think they were after the Olympia this year, they realized like we had way too many people, which is
It was
100%
it was
correct.
a ton of people and
But I
Olympia.
think they got rid of the point system, and when you really think about it, that's only going to get rid of 3 competitors in each division. There were so many competitors because the qualification period was 14 months long
Hmm.
versus the normal 12. So now this year, the qualification period is only 10 months. Um, so we have until I believe the cutoff is the first weekend in October. So yeah, there's definitely some things to think about with my coaches. One of the reasons I'm going out there is just I was kind of mentally exhausted and kind of questioning, what am I going to do this year?
Hmm.
Because I've been in prep for 30, like I'd mentioned, by the time the Arnold comes around, I'll have been in prep for 32 weeks. Um, but then the first show to qualify is June, and then the last show is October. So that sounds like a long time, but it's really not when you think about it, because if I continue out after March, it's either, I have a couple options. I either have a really, really short off season and I get back into it and I pick 2 or 3 shows and I kind of put my eggs in those baskets and say, I'm going to win one of these. Or I kind of continue on and I just start with the first show of the season and hope that maybe first or second show I can win and then I get some time off. Really worst case would be like to do all of those shows and like stay in prep and then not
Yeah,
qualify.
yeah, that'd be
Um,
tough.
so we definitely need to, I think right now it's just like, let's focus on the Arnold and then kind of create a strategy. I know I need a few weeks at least to get my calories up and mentally just have some time, like not as intense. I don't
Mhm.
think I need a long period of time, but I need like a little refresh for myself and be able to visit some family and take some trips. Um, but after that, it's not a long period to make a decision.
Yeah, yeah. Well, with those shows that you're talking about, it's like another. I mean, obviously, like doing all those shows and not qualifying would be bad, but also like doing all those shows and qualifying at the last show would be tough too, because you don't have that much time between that and the Olympia. When is the Olympia next year? Is it December again or
It is in November. I
November?
want to say
November.
it's before Thanksgiving,
Got
so
it.
I was happy about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure most competitors are, yeah.
I think unless the schedule changes, last I looked, I think there was 8 shows or 8 or 9 shows to qualify for fitness. And I think 2 or 3 of them, at least 2 of them were overseas and one was in Canada.
Yeah.
So in within the United States, it's 6 shows to try to pick and qualify. Um, Thankfully the Tim Gardner, they always have fitness, which I'm very thankful for. So there's usually, Tampa Pro, Chicago Pro,
Mhm.
Arizona Pro. So those are always have fitness. There's a couple new ones this year. Adela Garcia is having her first fitness show, which would be in Texas actually.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a couple others that are sprinkled in there, but a lot of them are close together. It starts in June. And then I think there's actually out of the 8, I think 3 are in June and then like 2 are in July. And then there's like maybe 1 or 2 each month. So
Yeah.
definitely something that I'm going to have to think about. We haven't picked a show yet. And
Yeah.
like I had mentioned, like we were planning on changing my routine. So I would need to get back out to Arizona to see my coach to redo that.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of pieces there.
Yeah, you have a lot of like, yeah, like you said, pieces to put together, um I mean, like I guess you got to be kind of strategic in where you put all your efforts into. So, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. I mean, I'm glad to know that there's like at least a decent amount of shows. Maybe not as, I mean, with only like 10 months, it's not as much as it could have been, but still a decent amount of shows for fitness. Speaking of like divisions that aren't maybe getting their due, I'm sure you've heard like they're not having the figure division in
Mhm.
the Arnold. And, like, you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I think, at the end of the day, number one, like, I think people forget, like, this is a business and they're doing it to make money. On one hand, I think the committee, the years that they were having the Arnold without COVID or during COVID, like, they were losing millions of dollars, to
Mhm.
have the athletes there. But on the other hand, it's supposed to be a world championship bodybuilding show, and excluding divisions, I don't think quite brings the same level of competition.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure why they wanted to make certain statements in regards to it wasn't competitive or things of that nature, because
Yeah.
the 10 girls that were there last year were, 8 of them were top 10 at the Olympia. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, because it just seems like it was very competitive.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And yeah, it's
so I see both sides of it, but I do feel for them in the sense of, um, maybe if they were going to exclude a division, they should have been more prepared to make a better
a
statement.
better response.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
but
what
it
kind
just
of
seems like they weren't prepared for the backlash.
yeah, I think that what happened was they just kind of didn't manage the frustration well, like from the competitors and others who love figure, because figure is one of those like kind of staple divisions. And I completely understand that it might not bring as many eyeballs as as like a bikini or something like that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you were gonna say something.
I was gonna just say, like, if they probably would have come out and like, we can only sponsor three categories per division. Like, our committees decided to pick like the three categories that bring the most fans. I think there would have maybe been less backlash than saying that the previous year's Arnold wasn't competitive.
Right. Yes, 100%. Because I mean, looking at the Olympia, like I thought the figure division was great. I mean, I thought the
Yeah,
physiques were amazing. I thought Sydney's performance was amazing. I think she's one of the most dominant reigning champs around right now. So I mean, I think it was a little tough. I understand that their comment was a little tough to comprehend. It might have been kind of spoken out of like not really thought through, although I have a hard time believing that, they wouldn't think that through, but I guess it does
yeah.
happen. Um, but yeah, it's just it was really like heartbreaking for a lot of the girls. I know that because
Yeah.
you had
So
this is the two biggest shows. Like it's the Olympia and the Arnold.
yeah.
Outside of that, it's just more or less like minor shows. So,
Yeah, I think that I completely understand the frustration and like that, but what I really hated to see online was then there were some competitors that started just bashing other divisions and saying, that they hate muscular women, and that just because we don't show our butts, blah blah blah, those
mhm,
type of things. And I'm like,
mhm.
you can't, I know you're upset, but like it's not fair to take it out on the other divisions that do get to be included.
100%, 100%. Yeah, what I don't like is when they say, "Well, why? Like, if we're not in, why are they in?" And it's
Yeah,
like, and it's kind of like we don't want anybody to be out.
yeah,
So it's less about why are they in and we're not, as opposed. It's more about like let's see what we can do to get all the divisions in there, since like you said, the Arnold is a representation of the sport, kind of like the
yeah,
Olympia is a representation of the sport. um yeah, so I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens after, we'll see what happens next year. um my thought was maybe it could reduce it and maybe just not have as many competitors,
yeah,
that you just keep the division, just I don't know, cut it in half. Still not a great option, but it's better than eliminating it. But of course, I'm not in the know of their finances and what, why exactly they took that step. I don't really consider their statement to be correct, so I'm thinking that there's probably other reasons.
yeah.
So but anyway.
Yeah, and I think they've done the past couple of years, like there used to be, maybe 12 to 14 competitors each division, and they have,
Mhm.
since COVID been like basically 10 in each division.
Yeah.
I haven't seen more than that. So I think, for the Arnold, like I think 10 is a great number per
Hmm.
category. Things run pretty quick for fitness. It's 20 minutes for routines. You're probably going to have 2 call outs. It's not going to be like the Olympia where it's this long, thing. But I will definitely miss. I love the figure division.
Yeah.
If I didn't do fitness, I would be first in line.
Yeah. Well, you guys are akin, right? Like you're kind of like you're kind of like have like a almost like a sisterhood type of division because the really, I mean, the only thing that separates you is the routine, right? Because other
Yes.
than that, your posing is the same. The physiques that they're looking for are the same, right? Correct? Am I
Yes,
correct
it's
in that?
very, very, very similar. And I would say if you put, the top 3 girls in figure, the top 3 girls in fitness, they're all going to look very, very similar.
Hmm.
I think with other fitness competitors, myself included, we can get away with being a little bit softer because of the
Right. Right.
routine versus figure. But I would say, top 3 in each division would be very comparable of what they're looking for and how it's being judged.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, we can kind of round up. I know I had you for a little bit and you're, with your family. So I want you to be able to get back to them. But Alison, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I wish you the best at the Arnold. I'm
Thank
planning,
you.
I'm planning to be there. So hopefully I'll see you there. And yeah, take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.